Most extinct lions we talk about died out somewhere between 10 and 100,000 years ago, back when giant sloths and mammoths were still walking around. This one is different. This lion fought in the Roman Colosseum. Appeared in Egyptian hieroglyphics thousands of years before that, and by most official accounts, went extinct in the wild sometime in the 20th century. Not the distant past, the 20th century. And even that date might be wrong, because there's a real chance small groups of these lions were still quietly surviving in the mountains of North Africa well after everyone assumed they were gone. This is the Barbary lion, and its story doesn't really end where you'd expect.
The Barbary lion, sometimes called the Atlas lion or the North African lion, lived across the Maghreb region of North Africa, from Morocco in the west all the way to Egypt in the east, mostly sticking to the forests and mountains north of the Sahara. Fossil evidence puts it in the region as far back as around 100,000 years ago. What made it stand out, at least according to legend, was its mane. Males were described as having thick, dark manes that extended down over the shoulders and belly, sometimes all the way to the elbows, which was assumed to be an adaptation for surviving cold winters in the Atlas Mountains. For a long time, hunters and naturalists also insisted this was simply the biggest lion subspecies out there, with some 19th century accounts claiming individuals over 10 feet long and weighing more than 600 pounds. Here's the catch, though. When a zoologist named Nobuyuki Yamaguchi actually went back through the historical record in the early 2000s, he found surprisingly little solid evidence to back up the giant lion reputation. Most verified specimens land much closer to the size of an average modern lion. And that legendary mane isn't necessarily a fixed genetic trait either, since research on modern lions has shown mane size and darkness is heavily influenced by testosterone, temperature, and nutrition, not just subspecies. So a lot of what made the Barbary lion special may have been exaggeration piling up over centuries of hunter stories.
Exaggerated size or not, this lion absolutely earned its reputation through sheer body count, mostly because of what humans did to it. Ancient Egyptians featured lions constantly in their art and religion, associating them with the war goddess Sekhmet, and lion hunting was treated as a display of royal power. Pharaoh Amenhotep III had inscriptions made boasting that he personally killed over 100 lions in just the first 10 years of his reign, and he almost certainly wasn't the only ruler using lion hunts to prove his strength. But it was Rome that turned the Barbary lion into a full-blown commodity. Accounts from the era claimed Julius Caesar and Pompey each put on displays featuring hundreds of these lions at once. In the Colosseum and other arenas across the empire, lions were pitted against gladiators, against each other, and even against other exotic predators like the now also extinct Caspian tiger, all as mass entertainment known as venetations. These weren't small occasional events. They ran for centuries and killed animals by the thousands, and historians widely agree this demand for arena lions devastated wild populations across North Africa long before modern hunting technology even existed. There's an especially strange footnote to this story sitting in England. 2 lion skulls were dug up at the Tower of London in the 1930s, and when researchers finally radiocarbon dated them decades later, they came back to the 13th and 15th centuries, making them the oldest confirmed lion remains found anywhere in the British Isles since actual cave lions went extinct at the end of the Ice Age. DNA testing confirmed those lions originally came from North Africa. The Tower of London kept a menagerie of exotic animals, mostly big cats and bears, from 1235 all the way to 1835, and Barbary lions were part of that collection for centuries.
By the time firearms became widely available, the Barbary lion's population had already been hammered for a very long time, and guns finished the job. Bounties for shooting lions spread across North Africa through the 1800s, with the Ottoman-era Turkish administration in some regions actively hiring hunters specifically to eliminate them, and the destruction accelerated fast from there. When France took control of Algeria in 1830, colonial authorities eventually hired a professional hunter named Jules Girac to eliminate lions from the region, and between 1873 and 1883 alone, he's credited with killing 203 of them. By 1884, the cedar forests of Shalia, once considered solid lion territory, had none left. Tunisia's lions were gone by around 1890. Piece by piece, the Barbary lion's range collapsed from the entire top of the continent down to isolated pockets in the Atlas Mountains, and by the 1920s, most naturalists considered it functionally extinct in the wild.
Here's where the story gets stranger than the textbooks usually let on. The commonly cited last wild Barbary lion was shot in 1942 near a mountain pass called Tizi en Tichka in Morocco, and there's an actual photograph of a wild one taken from an airplane in 1925 on a flight between Casablanca and Dakar. Officially, that's roughly where the story ends. But in 2013, a team of researchers led by Simon Black went looking for what happened after that supposed final shooting, and what they found complicates everything. Instead of relying only on official hunting records, they tracked down first- and second-hand eyewitness accounts from elderly residents in remote communities across Algeria and Morocco, people who claimed to have seen lions well after the animal was supposedly already extinct. Using statistical extinction modeling, the same kind of math used to estimate when any species without a clearly witnessed final death actually disappeared, they calculated the Barbary lion most likely persisted in Morocco until around 1948 and in Algeria until around 1958, with a confidence range stretching as late as 1965. Their most recent solid sighting came from a group of people on a bus in a forested part of Algeria in 1956 who reported seeing a lion crossing the road. If that research holds up, it means small, hidden populations of wild Barbary lions were very likely still out there well into the lifetimes of people who are still alive today. Not a prehistoric extinction, a recent one that mostly just went unnoticed.
For almost 2 centuries, the Barbary lion was treated as its own distinct subspecies, first formally named Felis leobarbaricus in 1826 by the Austrian zoologist Johann Nepomuk Meyer. That classification held up through decades of shifting lion taxonomy, different naturalists splitting and merging lion subspecies throughout the 1900s. Then in 2016, a large genetic study examining lion populations across Africa found something that upended the whole picture. Barbary lions genetically weren't actually distinguishable from Asiatic lions, the population that still survives today in India's Gir forest. The following year, the IUCN's own cat specialist group formally revised lion classification to reflect this, grouping Barbary lions into the same broader subspecies as lions from West Africa, Central Africa, and Asia, all now called Panthera leo leo. So a population that spent nearly 200 years being celebrated as uniquely North African turned out, genetically, to have far more in common with lions on the other side of the world than most people ever assumed. So, is the Barbary lion really fully extinct? This is where things get genuinely murky. For decades, various zoos and circuses around the world have claimed to house authentic Barbary lions, and almost all of those claims fall apart under genetic scrutiny, usually turning out to be ordinary lions or hybrids with sub-Saharan populations. But one collection keeps coming up as a serious possibility: the Rabat Zoo in Morocco, which claims to house around 35 purebred descendants, all sourced from a private royal collection maintained by Morocco's sultans and kings for well over a century. It's a genuinely compelling claim, given how long that royal line goes back. Except when researchers actually tested samples from that same royal collection, the results were messy. 5 tested samples came back as not maternally Barbary lion at all, at least according to mitochondrial DNA. That doesn't necessarily rule out the whole collection, since mitochondrial DNA only traces the maternal line, and plenty of hybridization could have happened at some point over generations. Realistically, after more than a century of breeding in captivity, a certain amount of mixing was probably unavoidable, and that doesn't take away from what the zoo is actually doing. Whether or not every lion in that collection is a perfectly pure Barbary lion, Rabat Zoo has spent decades protecting and breeding the closest living link to this animal that still exists anywhere on Earth, which on its own is a serious conservation effort worth recognizing. Meanwhile, other individual lions scattered across ordinary European zoos have turned up genuinely promising results. A 2006 genetic study traced a lion at Germany's Neuwied Zoo directly back to the King of Morocco's collection, concluding it was very likely a real Barbary lion descendant.
Since Barbary lions were historically one of the most frequently exported lion subspecies to European zoos and menageries for hundreds of years, some researchers estimate as many as 80 to 100 lions living in captivity today could be carrying at least partial Barbary lion ancestry, just scattered anonymously among general zoo populations that were never carefully tracked by subspecies. This uncertainty is exactly what led to a real, organized effort to sort it all out. A UK-based organization called WildLink International teamed up with Oxford University and researcher Nobuyuki Yamaguchi to launch what became known as the Barbary Lion Project, also called the Atlas Lion Project. Their plan was methodical. First, extract DNA from confirmed historical Barbary lion remains sitting in museum collections across Europe, in cities like Brussels, Paris, and Turin, to build a genetic fingerprint of what a true Barbary lion actually looked like at the DNA level. Then, test captive lions around the world against that fingerprint to identify legitimate descendants. At the time the project got underway, researchers had already identified around 60 captive lions worldwide considered strong candidates. The eventual goal wasn't just academic, it was to establish an actual breeding program using confirmed descendants, with the long-term hope of one day reintroducing lions with genuine Barbary ancestry back into their historic range in the Atlas Mountains. Whether that reintroduction ever actually happens is still an open question, and depends on funding, further genetic work, and frankly, a lot of political and logistical hurdles that come with returning a large predator to a modern, populated landscape. But the underlying point is this: the Barbary lion as a fully pure, wild population is genuinely gone. Yet scattered across zoos in Morocco, Germany, and elsewhere, there are almost certainly lions alive today carrying real pieces of that lineage, walking around in a strange, unresolved space between extinct and not.
So, the Barbary lion isn't quite a clean extinction story. It's a lion that fought in front of Roman crowds, was hunted for centuries before firearms even entered the picture, may have quietly survived in hidden mountain populations decades after the history books closed the book on it, and might still have genuine descendants alive right now without anyone being entirely sure which ones they are. Extinction usually feels like a hard, final line. This one's still blurry. If you found this one interesting, let me know in the comments, and subscribe for more forgotten animals with stories nobody expects.